Hello! In this video we're going to go over how you create a table in Python using MySQL. So let's start by going to the MySQL workbench, and as we can see we have no tables in the database. No tables. So we want to be able to create a table using MySQL. So let's do that. So what we have to do is do mycursor.execute. Now you should have watched the previous video where I told you how to create, retrieve, update, and delete. So these concepts should be fine with you, what a cursor is and things like that. And if you remember in that last video, we used very non-optimal data types. So for example, we used a lot of varchar and int, where maybe we should have used a boolean or maybe a float or a date. So I'll show that to you as well in this video. But first we'll create a table. So let's begin with the create statement. So we do create, okay? Create table, and remember, make sure you're using capital letters. Employee, employee ID, and that's going to be an integer. We're going to have the first name be a varchar. Then, of course, varchar stands for variable character. The reason why we want to have the first name and second name varchar is because you don't necessarily know how long a first name would be, and 255 characters is a pretty good estimate. Yeah, so that's why we use varchar. Now, it's not the most memory efficient, but I will cover that. So, gender. Now, for our system, we have two genders, male and female. So as a result, we can use a boolean, and I'll show you how you use booleans later on. So we'll have boolean there, and that's good because it only takes 1 bit to store, because it's a yes or no, 1 or 0. So again, we save. The whole point of using these specific data types is to save on the amount of memory the database takes up. I believe in the previous video we had that as a varchar with just male or female written in as a string, but it doesn't make sense if you only have two options to have that way. Job type, we'll leave that as varchar 255. Now you could probably lower that number to say 50 if you knew that you only had jobs of a certain length, but we're just going to leave it as 255 for simplicity. Hourly wage. Now, hourly wage should be a float. Why should it be a float? Well, it shouldn't be an integer, because that would just be whole number values. Yeah, so but normally whenever you may have a decimal thing. So let's say you were working and you got £8.50. Well, if you didn't have an int there, you wouldn't be storing £8.50. You'd either be storing £8 or £9, depending on whether you truncate around. But for a more accurate wage, we can use float. So we'll use that, and then we'll do finally a new field called date joined, and that will store a date, and that will be just the date when it was created. Okay, so then of course we end our statement with a bracket there, and you would need to do that here as well. So so okay, so we've got our execute statement. So it's create table, and then the table name, and then your name of your column, and then your data type. Name of the column, then data type. And remember, it's comma separated, so you have name of the column, data type, comma, name of the column, data type, comma. And then since you opened a bracket here, You're going to need to obviously close it there. So that, and then what you can do is just execute that using mycursor.execute. And now when we run this, we should see that you get this screen, but of course, when I refresh the schemas page, we see we have a table, employee, with employee ID, first name, second name, gender, job type, hourly wage, and date joined there, which is good. And if we look here, we can see that that our data, this is how our data is being stored. So we've got employee ID as an int, integer. We've got first name varchar, second name varchar. Now this is interesting. Gender is, we said we were storing it as a boolean. Now a boolean can be true or false, so it's going to store it as 1 bit. So it's going to be 0 or 1. That's why we're using tinyInt here. That's why the MySQL says tinyInt1. So it's a tiny int of size 1. So you only have 1 or 0. Then we have float and date there. Yeah. So we're using these. The reason why we're using these sort of more specified data types is that it saves on database on the size of the database, so less storage, and it's also more optimized for certain searches and things. So that's why we are doing it like this. Yes. So that's our table created. Now, you may note that I'm omitting the retrieve, update, and delete squares here for the sake of brevity. We're just going to focus on the create statement today, but yeah. Anyway, so yes, so if we run this again, however, with the same create table statement, we're going to encounter an error. It says table employee already exists. That's not great. A big error. So, why are we getting this? Well, we can't create a table that already exists. We can't, MySQL won't overwrite, it'll simply error. So, what we need to do is to put in a special parameter here. We need to say create table, and then if not exists. So, we're saying create the table if it doesn't exist. So, if we run this now, it's fine. We didn't bother creating the table. We essentially skipped this line. But if I delete this table, so if I say drop table, there we go, and then we run this, we get the screen and we get our table. Okay, so that fixes that error. Now you can add things like foreign keys and cascades and things like that, relationships in this create statement, but for WJEC students, you're not allowed to do that. You have to implement that in your own projects. For those who are not in that sort of category, then yes, you could then add foreign keys or cascades or things like that, but that's outside the scope of this video. But that's where you would put them in this statement here. So we've got our create statements, and now when we run it, we get our lovely screen. Now, I've not changed this interface and the back end behind it, so that's going to cause a bit of an issue. So if I try and add a person, okay, let's add this. So Sally Banks, female, fry cook, earning £5.25. We create that. We're gonna get an error. It says incorrect integer value, female for column, gender at row 1. So it's complaining that we're writing the word female to the gender column, and of course that doesn't make sense because we're only storing tiny ints, which are integers. It's worth pointing out that that in MySQL you have a certain a scaling effect for the data types. So you have tiny int here, which would store very small numbers. Then you would go on to small ints, and then big ints, and things like that. And the bigger the int, the higher the higher the biggest value you can store, and the more precise you can get in terms of floats and things like that. So the higher you can go up and down, so the ranges of what numbers you can store increase. But of course, if you're using a big int, it's going to take up more space it's going to take up more storage for your database. So that's why you have to sort of choose what data types there are. Now there's of course more data types than this here, for example text and things like that, and I would advise you have a look at them and see what you can come up with for those. Of course not every data type is going to suit every situation, but yeah. Anyway, so we should continue. So we've got incorrect value, right? So that is in that is in this statement here, where we're saying, where are we at there? So we're saying create, yeah. So this create statement's completely wrong. So we're gonna sort of rewrite it then. So okay. So let's go ahead, and we're not going to completely rewrite it actually. We're going to keep our employee ID. That's fine. Now, of course, remember we had that date value. So we're going to say date equals, and then you should import time, and then you do time.strp, strip time, and then we pass in our formatter. So we're going to say %y dash %m dash %d. So that's going to be our date format, year, month, day, because that's the format that MySQL the format the MySQL date data type takes essentially. So yeah, so that's the default format. Of course you can change that, but for the sake of this video we're gonna stick to this. So yeah, so we've done that. Okay, so that's our date, and remember this is going to give us our date, which is currently now. So it'll give us the 2020, the 4th month, 30th. So that's what's going to appear there. Okay, and we're saving that as the date variable. So now we've got a choice, because remember the radio buttons return female or male. So what we're going to need to do is essentially write an if statement, and we say if gender.get equals male. So if the user selects male, what we're going to do is we're going to insert into the MySQL table, and we're going to say that this person, instead of gender.get, we're going to use the word false, because remember this is a boolean. Gender is a boolean in our system, so boolean is either true or false. So that's going to write 0 to our MySQL database. It's not going to actually store the word false, because of course false isn't a tiny int. Now where did we get to? Hold on. False. There we go. Right, okay. So job.get, yep, is fine. Wage.get is fine. And then of course we need our date. So our date is going to be date, and we don't put .get because it's not a tkinter variable. So that's fine the way it is. Okay. Now, if we look at this, we need to obviously put in date. So we're going to say date joined, because this is now our field here. So we're going to say date joined, And then we need to add another %s there, because of course we need to make sure that the number of %s's match the number of column names. %s obviously are wildcard values, and that's what we're sort of replacing when we put our data in. So we've got that, and that's great. So that's our if statement for if a male is chosen. Else, so if they pick female, essentially, we're just gonna copy this, and then we're gonna make that true. And in fact, this line is actually the same in both if statements. So what we can do is actually just move that over here, and then delete it from here. There we go. So. But you can see that we're using false for male and true for female. Okay, and then we do mydb.commit and then TreeView update. So that's fine now. Remember that we need to import time up at the top there to use time.striptime. So okay, so when we run this now, we're gonna get another error. We're gonna create. We're gonna say Sally Banks. I'm going to say female, fry cook, £5.25, and I'm going to hit create. We're going to get this error. Yeah, sorry, I made a small mistake, sorry about that. Instead of strp, you use strf, so string format instead of strp. Sorry, my mistake there. That's auto tab for you. Anyway, yeah, so whenever we run this now, we're still going to get an error. Well, we're not going to get an error, but we're not going to get the tree view updating. But anyway, I'll continue. So Sally Banks, so we'll say $5.25. She's going to be female. Fry cook create. Okay, now if we go back, nothing's there. But if we go, because the update hasn't been implemented. But if we go to this, we can see that we've got Sally Banks, employee ID 1088, Sally Banks, and then her gender is 1, so it's being stored as a boolean, it's being stored as true in our database. So I'm gonna teach you how to translate that back out. Fry cook, hourly wage £5.25, and then the date join there, which is obviously that date there, the 2020 of the 4th of the 30th. Now you can change that by changing the date. You can use different data type, or you can change the date being inserted in, or you could just try a different format. But now we're going to go on to updating this tree view. So if we come down, here we go. So again, I didn't implement this yet, so we're going to try this now. So of course we're going to need to begin our update tree view by removing everything from the tree view. So we can say update remove equals update employee view dot get children, get underscore children. So there we go. Okay, and then we say for child in remove, we're going to say employee view dot delete child, and there we go, that's everything removed. Okay, and then we want to do my cursor dot execute, and then we want to select the first name, second name, gender, job type, hourly wage, date joined, from employee. Okay, so we're selecting all of that data, and then we're going to say my results equals my cursor dot fetch all, and I'm going to say for I in my results, we're going to do if I square bracket 2. So why am I doing I square bracket 2? Okay, so I'm gonna take a step back. Why am I doing that? Well, we're gonna have in my results we're gonna have all this data, right? So great. So we need to change this one that is stored in or this 1 or 0 that's stored as the gender into, we need to convert that into a string. So 0, 1, 2 refers to this. So I square bracket 2 refers to whatever is stored here in the gender. So we're saying if essentially if gender equals. Now, since it's a boolean, we can do false or true. So we say false. So if it's a male, we're going to say employee view dot insert, and then we're going to say so we're inserting from the beginning, and then we're going to go to the end, and we're going to say the text is going to be blank, and then we're going to do our values, and that's going to be equal to a tuple of all of the data, but with the important exception, instead of doing I square bracket 2 here, we're going to write the string male. Okay, and then we're going to do I square bracket 3, we're going to do I square bracket 4, and then I square bracket 5. Okay, so that's that one done, and then of course we need to do an else statement. So we say else, so if it's a female, then we're going to copy this, paste it, but instead we're going to change that to female. Cool. So now we have we're converting the boolean, the 1 or the 0, into either male or female back out to the user. So let's run this now. And you can see that we've got Sally Banks here now with who's female, Fry Cook 5.25, and then this. If we had, let's say we changed this, so it would be I square bracket 2. What do we get? We get gender 1. Now, of course, that's not, the user doesn't know what that means. To us, we know it's true. We know that that's what that means, but to the average Joe, they're not going to say. They're going to see gender 1. What does that mean? So we're going to change that back to female. And just to prove it works, we're going to add a man. So we're going to say Harry Wilson, going to be male. He's going to be a waiter, and he's going to earn £6. Create back. There we go. So you can see the date joined is correct, hourly wage, and everything's fine. And then if we go and run this, you can see that all the data is correct. Yeah, that's essentially the video. Remember the importance of if not exists, and also the importance of choosing the correct data types. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.